All right. Well, on that note, let's get started with today's session. Thank you everyone for joining. Excited to be here. So I'm Keith Curry. I am the senior digital associate at Trust. I've been with that Trust for a little over 4 years now. Um, I work with Jack on the digital communications team, helping with social media, email, website, kind of all of the above. And then my favorite animal is actually elephants. And if anyone has ever seen a baby GIF, like a GIF of baby elephants playing, then they would probably be your favorite animal too, because they are ridiculously cute and smart. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. Jack Fleming. I'm the Associate Director for Digital here at EdTrust, and really excited to be with everybody. I work with Keith as well, doing social media, email marketing, websites, paid advertising through display ads on websites or social media advertising, search-based advertising with like Google or Bing. And my favorite animal are lemurs, only found in Madagascar, the greatest island in the world, not gonna lie. And all lemurs. There are over 100 species of lemurs, and we don't have enough time to talk about them all, but I could if I wanted to.
Oh, and it looks like a good thing we're talking about animals because Lori used to work at a zoo. So
Yes,
I
Lori.
think you will like our presentation today then.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, so what are we trying to get out of today's session? So to start, we will define what omni-channel communications and omni-channel marketing is. Um, we will then start building out an example audience persona for the people you are trying to reach. An audience persona is a good way to break down your audience, to target it more, and to make it more realistic for an individual you are really trying to engage with your advocacy work. After we have that audience persona built out, we are going to then build an activities plan to meet your audience where they are. So we'll talk about different tactics you could use to really hit them on all different types of communications and engage them where they are already talking to people. And then finally, we're going to talk through ways to track and analyze the results in a single system. So since we will be using a bunch of different tactics to reach our audience persona, it's important to get the results from those campaigns, the analytics from them. And since there's a lot of different channels, it's better to get it all through a single system so you can see how they are working together. So what do we mean when we say omni-channel or multi-channel communications or marketing? So in today's world, digitally and physically, people are constantly connected, from going on social media, texting, websites, email, and even radio, television, or physical print as well. So omni-channel communications is using all these different tactics and channels to reach a specific targeted audience to engage with the body of work that you're doing. It's an integrated approach to ensure that your target has a seamless experience from their laptop to their phone or tablet and in person. So today we will be talking about obviously advocacy work, not selling to a customer like in the graphic, but it's going to be about how you can engage with your audience persona to really hit them in email and then have them seeing the same content on social and engaging them in all the platforms that they are already active
Awesome. So we're going to take a sort of multi-step approach. We've got three sort of big steps that we're going to talk through. I've got the first step here, and that is, how do we adapt this omni-channel approach, which
on.
really was designed by a retail marketing industry, to an advocacy campaign. And as alluded, we are going to talk about animals. So we're going to use a hypothetical situation. We are working at a zoo. We're the comms and advocacy team for a zoo. And our defined goal is to pressure our local state representative to increase funding for your zoo's conservation efforts, specifically around lemurs, because I made the PowerPoint, so my favorite animal gets to be the focus. So that's sort of going to be the big frame for us. Really important to set a clear goal at the beginning. Lots of resources out there about good goal setting, how to do that. The one that we really like at EdTrust is the Management Center. So if you Google the Management Center and search through their website, they've got lots of resources about how to build smart goals. They're specific, they're measurable, they're time bound, things like that. Another resource we really like is a goal system called Objectives and Key Results, or OKRs. If you Google that, it's just another way to sort of set an objective and then break out the specific deliverables to meet it. And you can sort of tier those as you need to sort of respond to bigger issues. So once you've got that big goal set, though, then we move on to step 2, and this is where I'm going to spend more of my time, building an audience persona. So what is a persona to start with, or what do we mean by it? Persona is a fake individual. You're creating an impression of your audience, a segment of your audience that you want to reach, and conducting user research to fill in where that person is living, what their interests are, other demographic information, what, in this case, digital media and traditional media channels do they use to consume information or communicate information. The idea being you define this persona really clearly, and it gives you the ability to then decide what tactics are the right ones to reach that audience. So to give you an example of what a persona can look like, look at that handsome man there. Uh-oh. Hold, please. There we go. Sorry about that. That occasionally happens. We still haven't figured out why, but we'll jump back to where we're supposed to be. So we've got mid-career professional. That's what we've named this persona. So you can have multiples. We suggest anywhere from 3 to 5. 3 personas gives you enough granularity that you can really get specific messaging and targeting differentiation. 5, if you do any more than 5, it's going to start getting really complicated to track everything. So you might be getting too niche, where like you could be using a message for multiple personas. So you can probably just combine those. So to frame up sort of the information you're gathering on a persona, something like this. Top level here is that demographic information. Here we've included age, 30 to 40, their relationship status. In this case, we're looking for individuals who are single. That could be, divorced, never married, etc. Kids, we decided we're going for uncles. This should say uncle and aunt. I'm recognizing my own bias, gender bias now in this profile, so apologies for that. But so uncle, aunt, so we want them sort of kid adjacent, but maybe not a primary caregiver. But there are kids involved in their lives. Location, city or an urban area, be suburban, so more densely populated area. Income level, we're looking, we're thinking usable differentiation here is 55,000 or above. And that sort of hypothetically is based on the city we're in, where the zoo's located. And then education, we're looking for a bachelor's degree and above. Other things to consider, certainly race, gender in general. So if it's an issue that is more relevant to people who identify as male or who identify as female or who identify as trans, like those are areas where you can differentiate additionally. You can have wider or narrower age groupings. So this is just a general way to sort of get a sense of who this person is, this persona. And then below that, in that next section, we're talking about interests and concerns. So given our topic, we're talking about animal conservation. So interests, national parks, zoos, conservation in general, environmental justice issues. So things like deforestation, plastic pollution in the ocean, things like that. We also think this individual, since they're interested in conservation, probably interested in travel or outdoors activities as a way to find other people. The Disney animated movies, we're putting that in as a proxy to identify the uncles, so or aunts in this group. But sort of family-centered media, or media that is perceived to be family-centered. Totally recognizing Disney has a very complicated history of enforcing racial stereotypes, and is doing work on that. But their public perception, and so people that identify with Disney animated movies can be a proxy for family oriented. And then along with sort of the outdoor travel, people that are interested in endurance sports. So marathons, 5Ks, triathlons, somebody that's just sort of out and about. And so may have maybe a leading indicator into their interests in conservation. Then there's this concern section. So these are the sort of interests or campaigns or issue advocacy issues that they might be interested in. So an obvious one, climate change. So, and there's a number of ways we can sort of figure out who is interested in climate change. And we'll talk about, awareness tactics to touch on those. More personally, like understanding that they recognize they have personal responsibility in the choices and actions that they make. So sort of an introspective look on the individual. How are they responding to racial justice? How are they responding to plastic consumption? How are they responding to water shortages globally? Things like that. A little bit more so racial justice oriented, especially in challenging their own white privilege. Again, that sort of introspection. We think somebody who's in that mindset is really primed and well positioned to want to be interested in taking action on this issue. And then another concern, this is so going beyond sort of like issues, like what are their personal concerns? And this purely hypothetical persona is really concerned about paying off their student loans. So they have student loans from undergrad and grad school and have been paying them off for a really long time. And so that is a personal concern of theirs that, something to consider. Like they're paying off student loans every month. Do they have the disposable income to contribute financially, or do you need to consider some other way of getting them involved? So things like that. There are lots of interests and concerns that can go in here. Ways to sort of flesh this out in terms of research, starting with yourself and your organization. Like, are there members of the persona group who you already know? Talk to them as a baseline. What sort of questions do they have, concerns? Beyond that, as your organization, you have access to social media followers, email subscribers, potentially website visitors. Conduct surveys with your already in touch individuals, supporters, to gather some more of this information. Going beyond that, you can do additional social media research. So once, for example, you've narrowed down an age group, do some research about what social media platforms those individuals use the most. And then you want to focus on those as a tactic versus other ones. You can also do consumer if you've got a little bit of money to spend. There is plenty of market research out there that you can access about consumer trends. For example, if you're looking at a generational definition, so instead of age 30 to 40, you're looking at millennials. Lots of research about millennial generation, Gen Z, Gen X. If you're using those sort of traditional generation buckets, you can gather information that way. And then just fleshing this out as much as you can is the goal here. So, and you can always add to it as you're learning. You can adjust these. You can have these, these could be organization-wide that you then adapt for specific campaigns. You could do this for individual campaigns depending on your capacity and your needs. So, that's a lot to throw at you all at one time. And as we're going, we like to answer questions as we're going because there's, contextually, we think it makes more sense. So I see one question popped in already in the Q&A. Can you put in the chat or reply with the other tool you were suggesting with the manager? Oh, yeah, definitely, Autumn. I will, when Keith's taking the next session, I will pop in a link to the objectives and key results tool that I'm familiar with. Keith, do we have any other questions pop up as people were going?
Nope, not seeing any others right now.
Okay.
Feel free to ask even during the next sessions if you have anything that comes to mind. Just throw it in that chat, and Jack and I will answer it for you.
Yeah, so I'll turn it over to Keith. He's going to talk through the next section for you. I'll keep an eye on the chat and make note of any questions, and we'll pause once Keith's gone through his stuff and take some time to answer questions then too.
Great. All right. So now that we have our audience persona built out, especially for this scenario, the next thing that you're going to do is build an activity plan. So this is how you're going to engage with that audience, starting from scratch and moving to some high-level actions as well. So based on the persona we're doing for this scenario, we're going to assume that they are already interested in acting on these efforts. Maybe what we saw in the interest, that they're looking into climate change and other issues, but they're not focused on lemurs specifically. We're also going to assume that they are active on social media daily, especially going into Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and that's where we're really going to aim to engage with them there. So to start, we're going to look at awareness tactics. So our goal for this is to expose our persona to lemurs and the dangers that they face with a actionable goal of getting their email address so we can engage with them more and send content to them. To start, what we're going to do is already use the connections we have. So we're going to send an action email out to existing subscribers we have from other listservs or where people have signed up on our website or previous events. And we're going to ask those advocates to recruit 10 friends about this issue around lemurs. After that, we are going to then use posters around the lemur enclosure with a QR code to sign a petition. So this will be more of a physical medium for our content, but we could also capture them digitally. With COVID-19, QRs have been on the rise. There's been a lot of QR codes. So if you've gone to a restaurant or even ordered one from outside, their menus will have QR codes on them. And it's a good way to get your physical content digitally, so you could track those analytics as well. So when people come to the zoo and they're looking at the lemur enclosure, there are the posters nearby. They can see how they can get involved and sign up digitally right then and there while they're already engaging with us in a physical platform. After that, we are also going to be running a interest and demographic targeted ads on Facebook and Instagram. So this is from using those interests that we pulled through for the persona. So for this scenario, national parks, traveling, environmental, climate change, those are all filters that you could put in on the back end for Facebook advertising. You could select each one of those to really target the interest for these ads, but you could also use demographics as well. So you can put in gender, age, financial status, education level. If you wanted to target your ads around a region, you can do that as well. So if we wanted to look at engaging with the residents of the city that this zoo is located in, you could put in zip codes or the town to try to get local support versus just tourists or visitors coming in. But these are all different ways that you could really target your ads on Facebook and Instagram. It's important when doing Facebook and Instagram advertising to really finely tuning the audiences that you're trying to reach, especially with nonprofits. A lot of times you don't have the biggest budgets for Facebook advertising, so you want to make sure you're getting the most return on investment for the money you're putting in. The last part, it kind of goes off of what the first three steps are. So each one of these awareness tactics has a goal of driving our audience to a landing page that then they will sign up and get their email address. We could further contact them. Well, by using Google Analytics, then you can see where people are coming from to that landing page. So maybe we got 50 people to sign up from the email efforts and 100 people to scan the QR code and sign up there. And let's say 200 people signed up through the ad. Well, now we have that information and they visited the site, we can use that for retargeting advertising on Facebook from those visitors on the website. So one way of doing that is by using a tracking pixel. Facebook has one, Google has one, and that will assign cookies and code to that visitor when they come to your website. You can then use that pixel when you're building out a Facebook ad to target those individuals specifically. So if someone has maybe come to the website and didn't sign up from one of the other three channels, you can plug in that pixel code and the Facebook ad will be popping up on those users' accounts. So then you can get getting your content in front of them again. It's just another good way of making sure all these different points of contact are connecting with each other so you could really get your work in front of that audience you want to reach. These are also just a couple tactics that you can use for awareness. There are a lot more that are out there. I think it was 2019, our last in-person boot camp. We did a session on more tactics for digital marketing, which Jack will put a link into. We had a slideshow, and you can see more of the tactics that are available to you for awareness, other than just these four. These are the ones that we thought fit well for our persona. So after you've done awareness, you have your persona, they're aware of the issue, and they want to get signed on and get involved, then you could start moving into action. So the goal is the persona has expressed interest and has taken the first step in our campaign funnel. So you might have heard of a communications or marketing funnel before, and if you have not, that is perfectly fine too. When talking about campaigns and moving the personas through your campaigns, it's often called a campaign or communications funnel, where the top of it is more broad actions that you want them to take. So signing up, maybe liking a Facebook post, leaving a comment, retweeting, kind of not heavy lifting that you're asking the advocate to do. And then you work your way through the funnel to really high level engagements, such as, we'll get into it, but emailing or calling their state representative in support of increased funding. So you really want to work them through the funnel in that. So that way, when you're asking that big ask, they're already familiar with your work. They're familiar with doing work for you on the advocacy behalf, and it won't be such a cold call or an ask of asking them to get personally involved. So to start in the action tactics, what we're going to do is send an email out to that list that we have generated from the signups, asking these advocates to post on social media calling for more funding and to tag their state representative. This is a lighter lift to ask them to engage. It gets you involved because you could go in and comment and like and retweet on these posts as well, especially if you have a hashtag to follow with them. The tagging their state representative, some of your persona audience may or may not be willing to do that. This post is the first step in publicly supporting your advocacy efforts. So putting the political part of it by tagging their state representative might scare them. That really depends on the persona that you have built out. And we went back to the first slide again. All right, there we go. The public persona of putting politics onto it, so they might be uncomfortable with doing that. You will just know that from the work that you've been doing with this audience and the engagement that you've seen so far. Another type of tactic that we'll use moving down the funnel is a nieces and nephews. Get your nieces and nephews to participate in the zoo's lemur drawing contest. So again, going back to that persona that we built out, we're looking for nieces and nephews because the average person in our audience won't have children yet, but they are still children adjacent and involved in their nieces and nephews' lives. So what this tactic is we would set up posters around the lemur enclosure for kids to go up and draw pictures of what they see and to get involved with what the lemurs are doing. You could also make it digitally involved. If they couldn't attend the zoo, you could set up a live stream camera. It could even be a phone of the lemur enclosure and stream it on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram and ask people online to do at-home arts and crafts of what they see, of what they're drawing. This is a good way of generating user content as well. So you're not only generating the content yourself, you can engage with them with what they're creating and getting the community really involved. Making it digital is also a really big thing right now. Seeing with COVID, it's hard to have physical things happening. So putting things online and getting the community involved that way is a good way to engage with your audience a lot. The next thing is to ask your persona audience to donate to support the conservation efforts. So there's a couple things you could do with donations. The first one is kind of a gifted tier system where if they donate a certain amount, then maybe they would get a tote bag back with the lemur's logo on it. Or if they donate a little bit less, maybe a pin. That's one way of doing it. You would have to find the costs up front for those items that you were sending to people. Another way to do it is how much they donate. Maybe they get behind the scenes information. So the advocacy work that's happening behind the scenes, that isn't just always posted online or shared through email newsletters. This is content that they will know by donating, this is where that money is going to. That's another way you can do it. And then lastly, you could also just directly ask for donations through an either end of the year campaign or mid-year campaign, but directly asking your persona audience to donate for these efforts. And then the final one that you kind of get to for high level is when you've moved your persona all the way through the funnel to emailing or calling their state representative to increase funding. So a social media tag we talked about earlier, they may be scared to do that, but hopefully if they've gotten the communication and tactics throughout the funnel, they'll be a little more open to it by now. But the social media one's kind of a light lift when this is very more engaged because you're asking them to spend the time to either talk to their state representative or send an email. We all know that doesn't mean they'll actually get a hold of their state representative, but it is a good attempt. It is a good thing that we want our advocates to be doing. It's important, again, to get community involved because it's not just your organization reaching out to these state representatives. You show that you have this audience and all these advocates willing to work with you. And they could even bring the earlier tactic of the lemur drawings and what the community put together there to these meetings or to in their emails as attachments when talking to these state representatives. These, same with awareness, are just some of the action tactics that we've put out together that are really good for our audience persona. But like we mentioned in that PowerPoint, there are additional ones you could use that might better fit your campaign. So I also just threw a lot of information at you. Please let me know if there are any questions. Let's see.
Great. So we've got one already. And folks, if you have more, pop them in the chat or in the Q&A tab. But Keith, Autumn asks, do you create a different advocacy plan for each persona? If you have 3 different personas, do you need them to have the same basic targets? If you do them separate, do you worry about oversaturation and possibly turning people off?
So I would say you would need different plans for your different personas because the idea with these personas, there might be a little overlap, but you're trying to really finely tune these personas so you know that this persona is more likely to be on this channel and engaging in this way. So that way, when you do the campaign specific for them, you won't be overlapping. Might have a little bit if you're thinking of general social media promotion, a little bit of overlap there. But I wouldn't be too worried about oversaturation or cluttering your own messaging if you're really fine-tuning those target audiences.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. So when we're thinking about this, like there's a single campaign, it's the big umbrella. Under that single campaign, you have your multiple personas. So the work that you're doing with each persona is directed back into that single goal. But like Keith was talking through, for this persona, we know they're more active on YouTube, Instagram, and what was the third thing? Go back to that slide. The first slide of this step. One more up. Yeah, and there you go. And Facebook. So we're gonna, for this persona, we're crafting our messaging and, for example, with paid media advertising, if we've got a budget to do paid media, we're going to focus in on those 3 digital channels. A different persona may be more active on Twitter and less active on these 3 platforms. And so we would run digital ads using that persona demographic on Twitter instead. So again, the different personas are working towards that single goal. But how you're reaching out to them, the manner that they're reaching out to your state elected official in our example case could be different. They could be, the people active on Twitter would send that tweet. But the people who are active on Facebook might be more comfortable making a phone call or sending a letter in. So that's sort of how the persona helps you segment your work. And so to make it, to increase the return on investment. All right. Okay. No other questions at this point, so we'll go ahead and keep moving. But folks, as we're going, if something pops up, pop it in the chat, throw it in the Q&A. There was one question about slides. Slides will definitely be available as well as the recording of the whole session. All the sessions from bootcamp are being recorded, and we're going to put them on edtrust.org. And the link to that landing page with the recordings and slides and everything will be shared out after bootcamp. And we'll include all the resources, so the past slides that I've put in the chat, links to the objectives and key results, goal setting, and to the management center we'll add to our event page for this session specifically. So it's all in one place for folks. All right. Okay, so we've defined our goal, we've set our personas, we've figured out the tactics that we want. So now we want to track everything because we're using an omni-channel approach to reach out. We want to gather all that information into a single place so that we know, for example, if we're running Facebook ads for this persona, are they actually paying off? And how are they working in connection with emails that we've sent to these same people? And so the way we link that persona behavior to action and return on investment is through an integrated customer relationship management tool or CRM tool. That's the best option. Think a Salesforce, Every Action, which is sort of an advocacy platform, or Salsa Labs or Blackbot or other advocacy tools have a CRM component as well. And essentially, that just means this is your single source of truth on data. You have a record for every person and every action that they've taken, including any notes you may make on personal interactions. For example, if they get their niece to draw a lemur and you share that on your social media, you've gathered that information about them, so you add that to their record. CRMs can be and do require some investment of resources, especially like a Salesforce. That's going to be a pretty expensive startup costs, anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 to get something set up. If you're working with a consultant and not just doing it yourself, I've tried doing it myself. It's super complicated, so I would not recommend that. But certainly, you as nonprofits, you can get free copies of Salesforce if you want to go that direction. But for small campaigns or smaller organizations, I have definitely used this in my experience in my past. You can use just a well-formatted spreadsheet, especially depending on how many sort of advocacy actions you're trying to push in and how large the audience is. You can track all of that within a spreadsheet. It's more time intensive, so that's sort of the trade-off there. But let's take a look at sort of what that kind of looks like conceptually then, like how this is how we sort of think and track things at EdTrust. So along the top of this slide, you see entry points. So this is where people are sort of entering our funnel that Keith mentioned. So we've got existing subscribers, the physical poster contest that we talked about, and then we've got social media advertising. So those are just 3 ways that people are entering our funnel. How do we then track the way that these people are entering? So for the existing subscriber, we sent them an email and we used a custom campaign URL to append data to the end of that URL, sort of tagging elements, to tell us the click that resulted in this visit to our website or this sign up originated from this email that we sent about this topic. For the physical poster that Keith talked about, we put a QR code on it that people could scan with their phone. That QR code essentially was a link to our website. And again, we appended that information saying this is a physical QR code for the poster by the lemur enclosure, so that when we're looking at our analytics, we know exactly where that person came from. And then social media ad, same thing. We're creating custom campaign URL. So we've created 3 custom URLs, all going to the same page on our site, but in our Google Analytics or whatever analytics platform you're using on your website, you can differentiate the traffic that's coming in. 2 ways this is helpful. 1, which we'll talk about next, is then how do we use that data for the next action coming out of that website. 2, it's also a great measure of return on investment. You sent out email to subscribers and you got X number. You're doing the physical poster, you got X number. You're doing paid ads that cost X amount of money and you got X number of entries. And you can figure out, we have limited budget. We need to put it where the money is going to get us the most engagement. You can start narrowing down. Like, we should really just be focusing on social media ads and not the physical poster because people don't click to it. Great. So shift a little bit of that budget. So that's those are the two big benefits of custom campaign URLs. Google has a free campaign URL tool. You search Google campaign URLs, it'll come up. We have a resource that was created by Bitly, the URL shortening company that we really like. They created a template Google Sheet um, and you just fill in the fields as it goes and pop the URL that you want them to land on, and it creates the custom campaign URL for you and stores it all. So you've got a running tally um, of URLs, and you can track. It also allows, if you have a paid Bitly account, you can connect the Google Sheet to your Bitly account and generate a shortened URL and get metrics from Bitly's API to see all in one place how those URLs are performing. So we'll share that resource in the chat as well and make sure it's on the landing page for the session afterwards. So we've got folks into the website. We've used our campaign URLs. Now we want to think about how are we sending this out, and that's where personalizing and segmenting follow up through our advocacy tool. So we talked about that entry point into the website, that was the awareness, and then we want to send out the advocacy. So we've got the social media posts, the drawing contest, the donation, the email or call to action. So how people are engaging with the content that's coming in. So social media, they responded to the social media ad, prime candidates for getting the ask to send a social media post. So we use segmentation in our email So we use segmentation. So we can follow up with an email address if we have emails for those people. Alternatively, Keith mentioned retargeting. We use that Facebook retargeting pixel to create only people who have clicked on the ad and landed on our landing page to then send them follow-up messages about, hey, thanks for supporting lemurs. Tell your state representative that they need to increase funding because of this, and this. But those are only going to people that we know came from social media because we feel like they're more apt to take action through social media. Drawing contests, so email addresses or contacts that we've gathered through the physical poster, so we know they visited the zoo in the post-COVID times, are probably prime candidates for a drawing contest. Whether that's in person or a live stream of the lemur enclosure. So sending them a follow-up email with that, putting that in, a special events email about something that's going on at the zoo. So they're prime targets for that. Donation is another follow-up action. So really any of these folks could be prime for a donation solicitation. So you follow up, easy ask with them. If they say no the first time, great, you just shift them to something else. If they say yes, subsequent follow-up is, consider making a monthly donation so you can build on that progress. And then the email or call to action, the email or call, so send an email or call your representative. The existing subscriber might be that way. So they've initiated some sort of interest in how sending an email or making that call. So, and then you cycle this through again. So you're sending, that first email to existing subscribers, and your social media ads. You can test different message points, and so you can figure out what message is really resonating with this persona. Is it, lemurs are cute? Like that was the thing that worked best. Is it that lemurs are endangered, and so they are really concerned about endangered species? Is it a broader contextual, like lemurs are just one victim of global climate change and deforestation and human impact on the globe, and so we need to approach and we need to solve that solution. So you can do message testing as you're going through and narrow down messages that may be better for these personas as well, and so you track that information in your CRM as well. You can see for email subscribers, you see when they open an email address and click. For social media ads, when they convert by visiting the website from the social media ad, what was that ad that they clicked on to run? So, and the campaign URLs enable you to do all of that. So, yeah, so that's quick and dirty. This part, the data tracking part, is always really hard to do. I will say it's one of the things like Keith and I can come up with tactics and things to do. The tracking the data and organizing, because there's always a lot, and so it always feels like you might be missing out on something. And that's just kind of something I think you're just gonna have to get used to because we have. So that's where the goal is, and the persona definitions. Like, what are the really key data points that we need to be tracking that inform the activity and success, and then you can just ignore everything else. So, and people will come to you and say, "Well, but why aren't we doing this?" And you can say, "That's a great idea. We've got this plan, and we're tracking these metrics to see how they work. We'll think about maybe doing that next." So don't be afraid to say no to other people's good ideas because you just don't have time. So that's it for us. We'll say it again just because we want to reinforce this. This can be overwhelming. We just threw a lot at you all at one time. Things that we have practiced and learned over 10, 15 years. What do we? Yeah, we're probably at closer to 20 years of combined experience in digital together. So, and we're always learning things. So, if you are feeling overwhelmed, I completely forgot to put a slide up here. We'll pop our email addresses in the chat, and so
you did get a quick question.
I did. I see. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we'll drop our email addresses in the chat, so you can follow up with us too. But we've got a few more minutes, so happy to take questions. Jessica's asking, what analytics tool do we like the most? Great question. At EdTrust, we use Google Analytics for our website, and we utilize Sprout Social as our scheduling, management, and analytics tool for social media. And Every Action, which is an NGP van product, is our advocacy platform. So that's where we send our emails, newsletters, announcements, things like that. That's how we collect our online donations. That's how we do advocacy actions like click to message, click to tweet your member, click to send an email to your member. So those are the three big tools that we use. Other questions? Saw some great animals posted in there, which is fantastic. We saw giraffes, the great blue heron, plenty of dogs. Love the dogs. My roommate's dog is behaving very well. Normally, in the afternoons, he's chasing cars down the alleyway in our windows. So, leatherback sea turtles, Ariel, I love that. Yes, super endangered and gigantic. Like you see them, they're so incredibly large. Okay, Judith had a question. How many staff members do you focus on your social media? So that's one and a bit. So Keith is our social media manager. So he's doing all the day-to-day crafting content. I play some role in it, when we're planning out maybe bigger campaigns, when we're setting our editorial calendar over several months. But Keith is really is doing that. And I'd say, Keith, it's at least half of your time usually in a week.
Yeah. Yep. And then also just want to make a note here on Jessica's question of what platform do you see the most engagement on? It really depends more on the topic or issue for what engagement versus just this is our most engaging platform. We have the most followers on Twitter, I will say that much. But for instance, our practice work with teacher diversity and teachers of color, that has gotten a surprisingly high amount of engagement on LinkedIn because a lot of educators are on there, more so than we get on other platforms for that specific body of work. So it's definitely, it depends on what topic. We try to make sure we're using certain channels and certain platforms for certain issues.
Great. Yeah. And sort of playing off that, Lori, great question. Zoos are super easy Instagram content generators. Totally agree with you there. That's definitely a struggle we've had with EdTrust. We knew we wanted to get involved on Instagram, but it's a primarily visual platform. So we're fortunate to have a graphic designer in-house who does all kinds of infographics and social media graphics for us. So we focus a lot on that information, sort of visualizing data. We've also we started using stories more. We started Instagram prior to the pandemic, so we were able to leverage stories for our live events like boot camp or sessions on briefings on the Hill. But we're also with Instagram TV able to use sort of longer form videos. When we do an animation or explanation video for a new report, we can post on Instagram video or TV and share that over to our standard Instagram handle. Other things that we've done Instagram takeovers, which can be great. So in absence of having live events, we can pass off our Instagram credentials to, we did one with, I think it was the Kentucky Teacher of the Year, Keith.
Yep.
Yeah. So she took over and sort of charted her day throughout, starting, she posted a couple updates, beginning before class started, and then throughout the day was posting both to Instagram stories and the traditional Instagram. So that's one other way you can think about using a more visual platform when you don't have ready-made animal content. All right. Well, we are just a little past time, and I think the next state working time starts at 3:05. So we'll hang out for a little bit longer. If folks have additional questions, we're happy to chat some more. Keith popped our email addresses in the chat, so you've got those if folks have questions they want to follow up with us afterwards, or talk more specifically about, if you have an idea for a campaign and you're not sure how to structure it or what tools might be useful, we're happy to talk through specifics with you as well. So we'll stick around, but thanks everyone for joining. It was great to have you, and we'll see you at another session soon.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.